So this year, a little background. So I've been doing these workshops. I'm Troy. This is Organic Gardening Made Easy. This is number 1 in a series of 8 or 10. This is about garden planning. These workshops started 4 or 5 years ago. It was a single workshop that we did. It was 3 hours long. It was too long. So the next year we split that in half, and I added a little bit more content, but that wasn't enough. People wanted more. So the next year it went to 6 in the year, and then we bumped it up to 8, and that's where it's been at for the last 2 years. So this Organic Gardening Made Easy thing was just something that I felt the community needed, and I just started doing it. Luckily, the library said, go on. So that's kind of the background on where the workshop started. Since then, we started a seed library here at the library, so you can borrow seeds the same way you would borrow a book or a video. You check the seeds out in the spring, you grow those plants out, you collect seeds from those plants, you return those seeds in the fall, and somebody else gets to borrow them again next year. So we will talk a little more about that a little later, but we got the catalog done. We got a whole bunch of new seed. Matt was a big help with that. And the reason that we're recording is because we're trying to open up other libraries, sister libraries. I'm trying to get one in Knoxville, and I'm trying to get one in Chattanooga and Cleveland. And I want to be able to offer a version of this workshop to them. So I can convert all these slides, take that audio, put the whole thing on YouTube, and the whole world can see it. But certainly the people that are our neighbors and would be using the seed library the same that we use it can use it. So that's the whole reason that I'm recording the conversation. All right. So go ahead and next slide, Sam. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about planning and why to do it and how to do it, basically, is what we're going to get into. And the first part is why bother, then we'll get into more of the how, the timing of it, and then the spacing of it, and et cetera, et cetera. If you guys have questions at any point, just shoot your hand up, and I will try and answer it. Hopefully, the question, if you shoot your hand up in the middle of the presentation, it has to do with the presentation. It's not about your tomato issues that you're having, or you plan on having because you had them for the last 3 years. We'll do that at the end. But between now and then, if you have questions about what I'm talking about, if it don't make no sense, then ask some questions. All right, Sam, what's next? All right, why are we going to do it? So, if we don't make a plan, then there's a good chance that we will plan to fail then. And well-planned gardens do better. And if we make a plan, then that space that we call our garden, we can make it more efficient. We can get a little more out of it. Now, that's one school of thought, is let's do the very best we can. The other school of thought is the only reason why I'm doing this is because I enjoy it. And, hey, go to Lowe's on Mother's Day, go get your transplants and a handful of seeds and go put them out there. That's great. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. That's not the method we're going to talk about tonight. As we move in, you'll see that I'll teach you how to do that too. That's more next month. But so tonight we're really going to talk about how we can maximize our space, okay? But I ain't going to hate on anybody if they don't want to do that, okay? All right, what's next? The planning process. So when we start the planning process, I started this on Black Friday for my farm. A little background on my farm. So I have a farm named Spring Creek Veggies. It's over near Riceville. We sell produce at the farmers market in Athens and Chattanooga and Knoxville. And so for me, since my garden is over an acre, I've got to have a fairly well thought out plan. And so that's why I started the day after Thanksgiving. So what I do is I make a list of all the stuff that I want to grow. And then I start to sort that list out. I'll say, I got my warm weather stuff and I got my cold weather stuff. So then I divided my list. Now, for my list, that cold weather stuff, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I will organize it by crop and variety. So I got my list of tomatoes. I've got my list of tomatoes. This year, it's only got 12 or 14 on it. It used to have something like 32 on it, 32 different tomatoes. That's insane. Don't ever do that. Because they all grow differently. So I've got it tapered down to maybe a dozen. I think I'm down to only 4 squashes this year. I'm doing 3 different beets this year. So my list is going to be a little bigger. So that's just an example. Next slide, Sam.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How do you decide on a particular variety?
You come to workshops like this and you get great information.
I do that.
Okay.
I mean, I would never have grown a beet. Now I'm thinking about a beet. How do I know which is going to...
How do you know what varieties to use? And so you just, I mean, like anything, how do you know what shoes to buy? You gotta either make a guess and go for it, or you talk to a couple people that might know something. You look something up online. I mean, the answers are, there's information out there. Whether or not it's good information for you, who knows? But I mean, so a lot of my stuff is I'll talk to other people that are growing, and some folks that are farmers are willing to really share that information. They'll tell you exactly what they're growing. They'll tell you the day they're planting it. They're telling you their yields. It's easy to see what they're, how much they're charging for it. So some folks that's easy. They don't mind doing that. Other folks are like, I'm growing the red beets. What are you talking about? That's all they're interested in saying. I grow Detroit Red because everybody loves a red beet. But this one right here, Touchstone Gold, it's a yellow beet. People do backflips for it. And this year I'm trying another yellow one called Boldore because it's supposed to grow a little better than Touchstone Gold, but everybody likes Touchstone Gold better. Those are the reviews in the seed catalog that I read. So I'm going to try them both out. And next year I'll tell you which one I like better. Okay, so I sorted my list into the warm stuff and the cold stuff. Now I'll tell you that I further sort my cold stuff into spring and fall because I don't grow all that stuff at both times. I don't like to grow brassicas in the spring. Planting brassicas now bring pests in May that are hard to deal with, and then they persist. So I don't grow them in the spring. I grow them in the fall when they are just loving life, especially if you give them just a little bit of cover. And then if I can keep them, if it doesn't get too cold, then my kale will survive, and the next spring it'll be big and lush and beautiful while everybody else has a little baby kale at market. I've got full-size kale. And that plan has been working for me for since I started doing it a few years ago. It works great. All right, next slide. Okay, so timing. So the timing is, we're going to hand out a free chart. Do you have a free chart yet? Free charts are great. And I hope I have enough. I'll have to go get some more. So last year, the library splurged to buy us some of these nice Clyde's garden planters. If you open up that Ziploc bag, you can get the planter out. Can I borrow yours?
Yeah.
And we're going to play with this thing because it is really nifty. Sam, if we don't have enough, Matt knows where they are, right? Don't just ignore that $1 price tag. If you want to go buy another one, that's what it cost you. But I talked the library into buying these last year and specifically for this workshop. So the way this thing works is you got your spring side and you got your fall side. Okay? So let's look at the spring side. That red line, there's a little calendar across the top. That red line is the thing that we set on the frost line. Okay? Now the next slide, we're going to get into that. This slide is really talking about, we got to look for this. We got to look at some sort of a reference to know what our timeline is. This is an excellent reference to know what your timeline is. Okay? It comes with a handy-dandy chart that tells you when they think the first and last frost date is. Next slide is going to tell us what the first and last frost date are. Then we got to get some seed. Okay? And depending on what we're going to grow, we might have to get it pretty quickly. Wow, we got a lot of people. These particular seed companies are some of my personal favorites, but I will remind you that you can get seed at the library. Do we need to keep this line up on that?
Yes, please.
Okay, we're writing down phone numbers. All right, Sam's back, so he can change when we're ready. But I would highly recommend either going to these websites and signing up for these catalogs or calling these folks and saying, hey, send me one, because they're awesome. This one in particular, I mean, it's like the National Geographic of seed catalogs. The photography in it's amazing. Rareseeds.com for those of you in the back that are having trouble seeing that. The Baker Creek Seed Company, it is, yeah, they're the National Geographic heirloom seeds. Amazing. So anyway, the other two, I put phone numbers in them because I grow seed for them, so I'm kind of plugging them a little bit. But anyway, they're nice companies. So True Seed is over in Asheville, and Southern Exposure is up in Central Virginia. So they're regional seed companies. They carry things that are good for our area, grown by farmers in our area. Anyway.
Which one was that? Which one goes for farmers in our area?
Southern Exposure and So True. All right, Matt, forward. Sam, next slide. Okay. Then these are the handouts that you, if you got the email, you may or may not have gotten them. So these are more resources to, if you get yourself on the email list. Where's the tablet computer? Where's the little computer?
Over here.
All right, because all those folks that came in, can you help them? Just tap that, should come back. So if you just got here, if you want to get on the email list, put your email address. Just type your email address, hit enter on this Word document. I will email you all this stuff, okay? And then next month, I'll send you a reminder about the class and email you any handouts for next month, okay? All right, so that's it for the references. Keep going, Sam. All right, so now we're going to get more into timing. So the one of those handouts has some pretty nifty information in it, specifically saying, hey, plant your beets on this day because you live in Tennessee, kind of thing. But Clyde's tells us the same thing. We're going to play with Clyde's garden planner right now. Did everybody get one? No, we got a couple late arrivals. Do we have any more?
Just one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There weren't. Are there any in the back?
No.
That's it.
Oh, wow.
We're out.
Okay. You mind if I give yours away?
Go
All right. So the way this thing works is you set your, sorry about that. You set the red line up on April 20th on the Clyde's Garden Planner. Pull that out, set it up for April 20th, and then there's some other information. If we're going to, let's talk about onions because they're right there at the top. If you pull it all the way out there, you can see that Clyde's going to tell us to plant in a 10-foot row. We can put out 100 onion sets. They're going to be 1 inch apart. We're going to put them 18 inches RR. What does RR mean? Distance between rows or hills. Okay, distance between the rows of our onions is RR, and we're going to thin them to 3 inches. So there's a whole bunch of information for each one of those things if you slide the thing all the way out. But then if we slide it back to April 20, we can see that FP, that's telling us when our first planting of onions can go out. And then those little green check marks are telling us when we can actually start to harvest some of our onions. So these frost dates on the presentation, the April 20 and the November 15th, those are numbers that came from weather.com, and that's basically, those numbers are true 50% of the time. Okay? Now they give another number that comes with a 90% confidence, and that one is more like May the 1st, and then whatever 2 weeks, November the 3rd or something like that. So it's just closer to summer. So depending on what it is, I wouldn't risk a tomato on April the 20th, but I would risk a squash plant because they're a little more tough. They can take a little burn. And same way with this thing on your later harvest, which we talk about in a different workshop, but in the fall, to say, I don't know how hard, unless it was cold hardy, if you're trying to push your summer crops, I don't know how close to that date I'd push them. I'd back it off to November 1st myself. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about, so this first little bit was about timing. The next thing we're going to start is about kind of quantity. How much of stuff do we want to grow? Do we have any questions on timing before we kind of shift? All right. What's next, Sam? All right, so if we're going to start seeds, which I encourage everyone to do. The reason I encourage it is because then you're not limited to what they're selling at Lowe's. That's why I don't do it because I grow too many to be able to afford what they're growing at Lowe's. But that's why I encourage anybody else to like start your own. It's because you have a lot more diversity available. But if that's the case, stuff's going to die and it's not going to be your fault. It's just how it goes. If you plan for a 10% loss every time you go and full with it, you sprinkle the seed, you pot the plant up, you plant it out. If you plan for 10% loss every time, then at the end you're going to have more than you expected. Okay. So that's kind of what this thing's talking about. Wow, 40% losses. So we think about that when we say, oh, we want 6 tomato plants in the garden that we're picking tomatoes from. Well, then we're going to plant 10 seeds because 4 of them are going to die. Okay? And then if we plan for that, we're not going to be disappointed when our 6th one, when we get 8 out of the deal. Just we take some to church and get rid of them, no big deal. All right, and then the next thing is how we're looking at this. How many? Is we said, oh, 6 tomatoes, but is 6 really enough? So how do we know to do these yield estimates? What's the next slide say, Sam? So this is really rough information. I found it online somewhere, and it was a site that had to do with, it was for folks that want to grow all of their food. And so they were saying, oh, well, you got to grow 300 pounds of tomato or potatoes and stuff like that. So if you are interested in eating fresh, yummy stuff in season, but that's all you want, then this is what you need. You need 2 to 4 tomato plants per person, 2 to 4 zucchini plants per person, because they're going to give you multiples. And depending on, well, I really like tomatoes, well, then maybe you're a 4 person. If you're like, tomatoes are okay, a couple sandwiches, then maybe you're a 2 person. So that's what this first one is about. Now, root crops, of course, you got to have more of because you only get one. They're once and done. You pull them, that's all you get. So they're 20, 30. These other things, this 3 to 8, that's like beans, okay? If you don't like a lot of beans, if you want to eat beans maybe once a week, then you can get by with 8 plants per person. Because each time you go and pick those beans, they're going to give you, 10-ish beans each. So depending on how much you like beans. Of course, if you want to put some stuff in your freezer or can it, you're going to have to plant some more. And of course, if I really like that and I want to eat more of it in season and I want to eat it all year long, then plant more. Or if you want to give it to folks or whatever, just plant more. So, but if you're like, you're in a rush, aren't you, Sam? If you are limited on space, that's what these numbers are really for. If you got a lot of space, then say, oh, okay, those numbers are nice, but I'm going to triple them anyway, so it don't matter. But if you're like, if your garden is the size of this table, then this will help you strategize your space. Okay? Now, okay, slight tangent. It's more has to do with that abundance thing, that last thing on the previous slide, saying plant more, plant more. If you plant too much stuff, there are places locally that can use it. And if you go online and you put in the search engine, Plant a Row for the Hungry, you'll find a website that is encouraging folks to do exactly that. Now, they don't tell you how to do any of it. They're just saying it's a good idea. I'm here to tell you how to do it. And so the college has a food pantry. There's their phone number. They're involved with a project that is called Love Thy Neighbor, and it's all about giving food to people who need it. And in the past, I have given lots of extra produce that I could not sell at market. I would just go there and drop it off, and they loved it every time. And I said, would you guys be open to home gardeners coming in with a little bit of stuff? And they said, bring it on. Bring it all on. Don't bring your rotten stuff. They don't want that. But if you'd still eat it, but there's just too much of it, take it to them. You could also take it to coordinated charities across the street from the recycling center. They just got some freezers. Matt's been giving them cabbage all winter long. So they just got into the fresh food distribution realm. Before that, it was just the college. And then if you're like, man, that's a great idea, but I need more space to do it, there is space available with the McMinn Community Gardens. Okay? If that sounds exciting to you, call the YMCA. They're the folks that manage that space. Just call them up and say, hey, I want to grow some food for some hungry people in the community gardens. And they will say, come on down, we'll sign you right up. The Seed Library is supporting those efforts with seed and or plants. If this is all exciting and whether or not you need the space, if you just want to grow some stuff for some hungry people, then talk to me. We'll get you some extra seed for that purpose. Any questions on the Plant a Row for the Hungry? All right, next slide, Sam. All right, so now we're going to talk specifically about the space. So, in the email, there was a piece of graph paper that you could print. I got that piece of graph paper from printfreegraphpaper.com. And so you can find great graph paper, printable graph paper online. Super easy. You can go buy a notebook of graph paper at Staples. That's easy too. All right. So basically what we're going to kind of do is we're going to draw a map of the garden. This is kind of a spatial organization technique. So that's very handy to a lot of people because they've got their little seed packets and they're like, okay, now what's this thing going to do? It says put them out. Oh, man. It says put them out so far apart. How much space is that going to be in my space? So if you get your graph paper and sketch it out, then you'll know. And so next slide. So we have to make note of south. So the southern exposure is where our most intensive sun is going to come from. So if we can maximize that aspect, we're going to be happy. Because most of our gardens, we think of them as summer spaces. Even if we think of them as winter spaces, they need sun. So that's the best, okay? What you absolutely got to have is 6 hours of sunlight, okay? And so in the eastern exposure, if that's all you've got, then that's good for things that don't like to be dewy half the day. And because they have fungal issues, which is a lot of things. A western exposure is good for things that like it hot because in that late afternoon in the summertime, it's hot. So that things that like hot sun, they don't mind a western exposure. So next month we'll talk about space, but basically the rule of thumb is you go out at noon. Go out at noon on March 20th. That's the equinox. So at noon, that's basically you're looking south. If not, take your compass out there and figure out which way south. Hold your arms out at. Hey, buddy. Oh, you the man. You the man. Hold your arms out at a 90-degree angle, and then with one hand, the one that was pointing straight out, put it out at 45 and center that up. Now you've got 125 degrees. You need to look up and see if there's anything tall between your fingertips. If there is, you don't have enough sun. That's 6 hours of sun, okay? So next week we get into where you put your garden in your yard. You don't want it by the neighbor's house. You don't want it underneath the walnut tree, etc., etc. You got to have this much sun, okay? All right. Any questions so far on space? All right. So when we're making our,
you're talking about the sun, but also if you've got a certain place in your yard that you're going to use, there might be a more wet spot in that area.
Because your house is draining all that water. Yeah, we get it more into that next month. So, all right. So we're going to talk about row spacing. Clyde's going to tell us a little bit. That seed packet's going to tell us. It's going to say put these things this far apart in the rows, this far apart down the row. So that's the type of stuff that we want to build into our diagram. The other thing is we want to think about what size tools and equipment we're using. Clyde says put your onions 18 inches apart. But how do we work between those 18-inch rows? My tiller ain't it's not a 14-inch tiller. I can sneak in between 18-inch. And that's how I like to take care of my weeds. I don't want to weed them by hoe. So for me, I would do it as a double row, and I would take two of Clyde's rows, scrunch them together, and give them a little extra side space in the aisles. So overall, they're getting the same amount of area per plant, which is what's really important. But I'm going to kind of rethink it for my tools and my equipment. So my tiller is 30 inches wide. So guess how wide my rows are? 30 inches. And then in between, those things that need to be, that I can stick in a double row, like onions, like beets, they are exactly 2 inches wider than my hoe. So I can just hoe right down between those two rows. So when I'm thinking about my spacing, that's how I'm thinking about it, okay? So we got to think about double, triple rows. And the way that we think about that is that we take our row spacing number and our in the row spacing number, and that's basically that unit. If we multiply those two numbers together, that's the square area that each plant needs. So if we can scrunch them up in one direction and spread them out in a different direction and still maintain that unit area, that's okay. They'll still grow fine. My tomatoes, I run them real close down the row, but my tomato rows are 6 or 7 feet apart. So I can smash them in there tighter. They grow like a hedge. And so, but that's the easy way to do it for me. All right, so that's one way to consider the space. What's the next one? I think we get to look at a map. All right, so here's our map for our itty bitty garden. It's only 4 by 12. And so we got these different things here. We got some tomato cages in the corners. We got a big tall trellis right down the middle. Notice our we have the south aspect straight up. So these things are getting a lot of shade. These things are lettuce. They don't mind a lot of shade. That's going to make them happy. They're going to get shaded from the beans and the cucumbers. We put the squash out here on the edge because they're going to spill over anyway. And we have a few tidy little peppers there, right there in front of the beans. All right, so that's easy plan for a small garden. But, I mean, look at it. There ain't a whole lot of stuff there. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they'll go buy all those cute little plants, and they plug them in, and they say, oh, look how small they are. Let's get them all framed. And they plug in that many more, and it looks real pretty for about a month, and then they all get 4 times as big, and then they're all like, oh my goodness, and then you got a jungle. So just remember from the get-go, if all that space bothers you in the beginning, just fill it with mulch. Then it'll look pretty, and your garden will be happy that you mulched it anyway. All right, what's the next slide, Sam? Oh, that didn't show up, man. It's supposed to be a table, so there's lines in between these things. So it was a square, but it didn't show up. I'm very upset. All right, so basically this plan, it was supposed to be bars that you could see coming across here. And that's closer to how I chart mine out, if I chart it out, because I think of a long row. So this thing was 20 by 50, so the rows are each 20 feet long, and then it's 50 feet of garden this way. And the things that the points of the plan, I'm bummed that the lines didn't show up. The points are that I had these different spacings. I got extra space for my tomatoes. I gave them a double space, and I gave these cucumbers a double space as well, because the cucumbers are going to sprawl all over the ground, so they're going to need the space. And like I said, the way that I grow my tomatoes is I put them in half as close as the pack says. The pack says put them out 2 feet apart. Well, the pack says put them out 2 to 3 feet apart, and I'm putting them out closer to 18 inches down the row, and I grow them like a hedge. But they need a lot of space so the air can flow between them. So they're getting plenty of space, 8 feet there. My onions, I'm going to do a big old double row of them. The spinach is a spring crop followed by a later crop of bush beans. Same way with the beets. The beets will come out and, well, probably by the 1st of June. And 1st of June is a fine and dandy time to plant some okra because the okra loves the heat. So that's kind of how I was kind of staggering some things to make use to keep that space useful. And then the rest of it, most of that stuff, I split this last row between eggplants and peppers because a little bit of each one is nice, but I don't really love either. So, anywho. All right, so that was the sample plan for what would be, 1,000 square feet of garden. That's more regular size around here. So, anyway, those 2 plans. What's next, Sam? We're getting close to the end. All right, so if you haven't done it yet, it's time to really think hard about getting some seed, particularly if you want to plant some early stuff, okay? Like beets, things you have to seed yourself. Beets, turnips, you got to plant that stuff yourself. You don't buy a transplant. You can still say, I'm going to buy cabbage transplants, I'm going to get my broccoli transplants. You can still, they just got that stuff at Lowe's this week. So you've got plenty of time. But if you know it's something you got to seed, a beet, a turnip, a carrot, you better order some seed or go buy it. I would recommend ordering it myself just because you get more variety, possibilities. All right, and then those things that you want to, if you say, okay, I'm going to grow some beets, you better start getting that dirt ready because the weather permitting part, that's the big variable. You're not going to plant those beets until next month. But if you think you're going to go out on one day and plant them, that might not work out because it's a root crop. That soil wants to be prepared, a little deeper than normal. So get out there on the next pretty day, dig around some, and then when you go out in March on a pretty day, dig around again, and then you'll have some happy beets. If you want to grow transplants, you better get to it. So now is definitely a great time to start all of the early transplants that are like a cabbage because they take a little while if you wanted to. But again, I do not recommend any of those early season brassicas because come May, the harlequin bugs come and they are hard to get rid of. So, but some people got to have it. So now's the time to start it. And then the other thing is transplants. If you know you're going to order some tomato seeds and you want to grow a nice big transplant and have that thing ready and big on Mother's Day when you're going to set it out, get it started now. I will tell you that I started tomato seeds the day after Christmas. Yeah, they're a foot tall. So, but they're going to go into my hoop house on March the 15th. So they've got to be big and strong by that time because they've got to be. It's still going to be chilly in there. I think I can keep the freeze off of them, but they still got to be chilly. So anyway, if you want big transplants, you can either pay $4.55 a piece for them at Lowe's, or you can start growing them now, and it's not that hard. Okay, what's next, Sam? All right, so please sign up for the email if you didn't already. Did anybody not sign up for email that wants to sign up for email? The computer's up here. If you're on Facebook, if you like the library's Facebook page, then you might get to see the little thing they do for this class. The Seed Library has a Facebook group. It's called the Tennessee River Seed Library. And if you can't find it on Facebook and you really want to know, just email this email and I will send you a link to it. And so the tnrvseed@gmail.com is the email address for the workshops. And if you send me email, then I will promptly try to get back to you. And anybody that signed up tonight, I will send you the handouts, hopefully by the end of the weekend. What's next, Sam? All right, so the next one's on March 9th. We're going to talk about the garden space. One more, Sam. All right, and so now we're going to talk about Seed Library. These are the companies that donated seed to the Seed Library. Where is that binder? All right, so we have this binder. Has anybody checked out the seed library yet? So basically, we got all these seeds. This is our little quote-unquote catalog. And, oh no, there are our quote-unquote sign-up sheets. So you look through the catalog, you find some seeds you like. This catalog is, it basically looks like a spreadsheet with a bunch of hyperlinks. If you are really interested and you want to know exactly what a Mayflower bean looks like, if you want to look at the description of a Mayflower bean, you send me an email and I will email you the Excel spreadsheet that has all the hyperlinks in it. Then you can just click on Mayflower bean and it will take you to the webpage of the company that donated Mayflower beans to us. And so you will know exactly what seed you would be borrowing. Not all of the items have a hyperlink description, but a lot of them do. So anyway, you find some seeds, then you get this form, you put your name in there, you put your library card number in there, you give us your phone number, and you tell us whether or not we're allowed to text you. The only reason we're going to call you if you're naughty and you don't bring your seeds back in the fall. Okay? And then if you want, you can give us your email. Then you look through these different, what is it? It is by the agreement, these things you're agreeing to. And then you sign it and you write down what you want to get. So you'd write down eggplant black beauty and tomato Cherokee purple, etc., etc. And then when you bring your seeds back, if for instance your black beauty eggplant all got eaten up by flea beetles and they didn't make, and you felt bad about it in the fall and you went out and got us a pack of carrot seed, you just write that in there. And we're like, oh yay, we got seed back. And we're happy about that. So you can find some seeds, you fill out the form, you hand the form to the librarian. The librarians go back in the back room where the secret stash of seed is, and that's where you get that seed. Now there is a tiny little card catalog out in the main part of the library, and it has seed in it that you can borrow, but it's really there for people to steal. So the seed in it ain't no good, so use this. You'll get better seed. Don't tell anybody I said that, though. But really, that seed's old. It's just there in case somebody wants to steal it. So use the catalog and get the good stuff from the back. Okay? So any questions?
I do have
Go ahead.
And forgive me if I'm jumping the gun, but will I learn how to harvest my seed?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's August or September. But yeah, that's on the schedule. Oh,
Okay.
that's what we've... So that's the other thing that you'll get with the email is the schedule of all of the workshops. So I can tell you it's on the second Thursday of the month except for July. We take the month off of July because we all have to weed. That's the homework assignment. I don't know exactly which topic is each month, but it's August, September-ish specifically for seed saving.
Thank you.
So yeah, but if you get an email, that's one of the things in the first email is the whole schedule for the year. And then, of course, hopefully Matt's going to keep going with that DPA thing. Look at all these folks that get the paper. Wow.
August is seed saving.
August is seed saving. Okay. And that little schedule, they ought to have that at the front desk of the library. They ought to. They're supposed to have a whole fist.
It's on the box of seeds, not to sell.
It's on the box of seeds.
Not on the seeds. The
Oh,
catalog.
that's where it is on the display.
Yes.
The display. Okay. So if you want the schedule, you know where the little green. Anyway, it's back here, near the magazines, back that way. All right. Any questions about what we talked about? All right. Any questions about what we didn't talk about? Not yet. All right. So next month we're going to talk about creating a good space in your yard, and so. We'll talk about the sun. You got to have this much sun. We'll talk about the big trees. We'll also take into some planning considerations. And next month is really meant for folks that haven't created the space yet and what they need to think about to create that space. Not that I don't want y'all to come because it's good information, but if you're like, oh, I've already got that, and he's not going to change my mind, then if you're not here next month, I won't take offense.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Have you got time? You're talking about getting your seeds started, this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite way of getting your seeds actually started? I mean, what do you you know, how much water, light, moisture, where you put them, all that sort of thing.
So each year I think about, should I do a workshop on that exact subject? And each year I think maybe I will, but I want to make sure that I'm good at it before I start talking about it. This year I've been lucky so far. Keep my fingers crossed. So what I have is in a downstairs bathroom. So I have a small room that I can keep warm. Okay. I have a shelf that I just made out of old plywood and 2x4s, and it's a 2 foot wide and 2 foot deep, 4 foot wide shelf, and it's got 3 shelves on it, and then 2 of those shelves have lights, so I can actually grow stuff on 2 shelves. And I went to Lowe's and just got the cheapest shop light they had, and I got the cheapest light bulb for the cheapest shop light, but I got 6 of them, 3 for each shelf. And they have chains, so I can raise and lower it. I never do, but I could raise and lower the lights. I do have a little heating mat. So one shelf I can heat from underneath, so the soil that those plants are growing in is heated up to help them germinate easier. And then after they've germinated, I'll slide them up the top one and put some new ones down below to warm them up. So for me, right now I have seven of the regular 1 foot wide, 2 foot deep flats, they're called, and each one of those flats has 72 openings in it, and there's a tomato growing in each one. So that's how many tomato plants I've started since Christmas. And then hopefully tomorrow we're going to pot all those up into a 3-inch pot and put them in our new greenhouse. That's what we're hoping. So I put them, so I go up to Knoxville Greenhouse and Knoxville Seed and Greenhouse, and that's where I get all these little nursery supplies, and they're happy to sell them in onesie twosies. You don't got to buy a whole truckload of this stuff. And the trays, those 72 cell trays, cost about $1. I put them in another tray that has a solid bottom, and I water that bottom tray so I don't have water everywhere. But I have to. That was really the trick for me, was figuring out how much water I could put in there without drying them, not letting them dry out. But I use a solid bottom flat underneath of my 72 cell flat to hold the water. And now the plants are getting big, we're watering them every day. Before, when they were little, I could get away with every 2 or even 3 days. I check them every day, of course. And then I got a tiny little space heater and a thermometer sitting on the shelf so I know how warm it is. And I have the space heater on, and I keep it right in the upper 60s. So the air temperature in the room is in the upper 60s. And that heat mat for those germinating seeds, I'll have it set all the way up 78 just to germinate them. And then once they're germinated and they get 1 inch tall and they start throwing out their first leaf, then they can come out and go up on the cold shelf, and I'll start something new. So that's the short answer.
You think setting them on top of floor vent in front
Maybe.
in front of a window?
If you
might
got
be
good
enough-
light,
if you got enough light coming out of
and
the,
if it's like a lot of
window.
light, it might be too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And my planting mix, my soil mix, I got at the hardware store at Lowe's. You can get the big bale of Bonnie mix.
Mm-hmm.
I get 3 of those a year. Well, you buy 3, you get 1 free. So I'll go get my free one. I'll get 4 of them every year, and I might use. Well, I get them now, so I have them now because they're not selling yet. They don't start selling until next month, but I need it in Christmas. So I'll get 4 just to have a couple extras, and then when they start selling again, I'll get 4 more, and I'll have it left over from year to year.
You think that mix is important? I mean, you can't just throw some
I wouldn't use dirt.
homemade stuff out
Well,
there.
you could get away so what the Bonnie mix is basically is it's peat moss that they added a little bit of lime to take the acid out of the peat moss, and that's basically all it is. And so that's great for germinating seeds, but it's not great for growing seedlings. I also have I'm glad this is a good question just because this part of the answer is the best part. So I have this fertilizer blend that I get from Beatty down in Cleveland, and I will mix that in. Once they get up a little taller, I'll start mixing that into their water and fertilize them from the bottom. And so the name of the mix, we started doing it last year. It's the Tennessee River Seed Library mix that I came up with. It's what I use on my farm. It's an organic mix. Last year, I talked to Beatty, and I was like, hey, I buy a ton of fertilizer from you guys a year. Can you guys mix it for me? And they're like, oh, sure. And it costs, $1.50 more per bag, but I don't have to fool with it, so it saves me a lot of time. And then at the workshops, people are like, Troy, what kind of fertilizer do you use? And I was like, well, I take this and that and put them all together in a bucket, and I got to breathe the dust. It's terrible. Well, now it's in a bag, and we can all buy some. So next month, I'll have it here. If you can't wait that long, call Beatty. I don't have the phone number, but Beatty Fertilizer, they're online. Ask them for the Tennessee River Seed Library mix. And it's supposed to be ready. So, but I just haven't gone and gotten it because I have some left over from last year. What's that? Yeah, Wayne, yeah. Wayne's a convert.
Now,
Yep.
what proportions do you use to put it in the water for the seed, starting the seed?
So for me, I have a quart mason jar, okay? I put about a cup in there, and I'll fill that up 3/4 with water, and I make like a compost tea in that little mason jar. And then in that mason jar, then I have this tiny little watering can that's perfect for putting 1/4 water into my flat. And so I'll put maybe a cup or a half a cup in there after I fill it up with water. I'll add a little bit of that compost tea and water them that way. And I might do that once a week, but not a whole lot. I'll watch the leaves, make sure they're not changing funny colors, but if they're lush and green and growing nice, I don't give them too much.
You put just a little bit of that solution in your watering can?
Yeah. And then I will, so I have and I try not to put the solids in the can at all because I don't want them growing funky stuff in that bottom tray. And so I'll just try to get whatever's on. I'll slurry it around a little bit, but then I'll let it dissipate and fall down a little bit and put that in there. But I haven't made a second batch. I'm still working on my first quart. I'll top it off with water, but I haven't added a second handful of fertilizer yet. And it's been going on over a month. But I've only fertilized maybe 3 times in that month. All right. Any more random questions? Okay. What kind of time we at? Did I do so? All right, 6:50. Not bad. We got more time if we need it. If not, then thanks everyone for coming. If you want to look at the catalog, it lives at the front desk of the library. It's here now if you want. If you want seeds tonight, I can help you get them. If you're not in that big of a rush, the librarians can help you on your next trip. Thanks for coming. Second Thursdays. Hope to see you again.